Hey, it's a great day. I am Mike Current, Energizer, and in this video I'm going to cover the 4 big questions that I am being asked since making my AT through hike announcement, to include why have I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. So let's get to it. So the first question I am being asked is, why 1 May? Why did I pick 1 May as the date I'm going to start my northbound through hike from Springer Mountain? Unlike the Pacific Crest Trail, which has a permit process and you're told the day you're going to start, the Appalachian Trail doesn't have that. You can start whatever day you want to start. And so people decide that based on a variety of factors. What fits into their schedule, family, work, all that sort of thing. They work through that. Do they like to hike in the cold, or would they rather hike when it's warm? That's all up to them. But typically it revolves around how long do they think it's going to take them to hike the entire trail? How much time do they want to give themselves in order to get to Katahdin before the snow closes down Baxter State Park and they can't reach the northern terminus? So how much time do they need? Typically the bubble starts in March, giving them that amount of time before September, October timeframe in order to get to Maine. In 2020, I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. I started on the 15th of May, and it took me 117 days to hike that trail, and it's 450 miles longer than the Appalachian Trail. So if I were to hike the AT in the same amount of time that it took me to hike the PCT, and that's a reasonable assumption, and I start 2 weeks earlier, then I should be hitting Katahdin somewhere around the end of August, and it gives me the entire month of September as a buffer just in case I get injured and I need time to recover while I'm on trail. So that's how I look at it. That's why one of the reasons I picked 1 May. The other one is I prefer to walk in the warmth rather than the cold. And it's not that I don't know how to walk in the cold. I mean, I grew up in the Sierras. I grew up backpacking in the Sierras. I know how to walk in the snow. At one point in my life, I did teach winter survival. Before I through hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, I did section hikes in the Sierra, sometimes walking for days in the snow. One time doing it with my 11-year-old son. And I made him navigate the whole way. Map, compass, off you go, kid. And as a side, from that, for all my military brothers and sisters out there, he pays me back for that. To this day, he pays me back for that. I started off in the military in the infantry. When my son was in, he was a Cav scout. So there's a rivalry between the infantry and the Cav. And I was an officer, and he was enlisted. So there's that rivalry. So whenever we go hiking now, instead of calling me dad or father or something like that when we're on trail, he always calls me LT, lieutenant. I'm a retired colonel, but whenever I go hiking, my son's yelling out, hey LT, put the map away before you get us lost. So he's paying me back. But for me, I don't like walking. If I have a choice, I'd rather not walk in the cold. I would prefer to walk in the heat. Like I said, I started the Pacific Crest Trail on the 15th of May. I spent the first 26 days of that hike walking through the desert at a time when most people would say walking through the desert would be insane. And during that time, I only had to stop for 2 days when it was too hot in the middle of the day for me to continue walking. The rest of the time, I just plowed on through. So for me, knowing my body, I prefer to walk when it's warmer rather than when it's colder. That's just me. So what I'm hoping is when I start on 1 May, I will be well behind the bubble. By the time I catch up the bubble, it'll be quite a bit smaller, just due to natural attrition. And as I walk through the bubble, I will be able to meet all of the hikers in my year group. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I will enjoy that. So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, why do I have the trail name Energizer? Where'd that come from? It came from the Pacific Crest Trail. And it came during the High Sierra when I was walking with a group of hikers, and we were trying to do the 5 high passes in 3 days. Now, most folks take 5 days to do the 5 high passes, 1 day per pass, and just the way they're situated. But I was with a group of hikers, and we got into our head, let's do all 5 in 3 days. So at one point during that, Smokey and I were sitting in a break, and he sits there and he goes, "Hey Mike, we're tired of calling you Mike. You need a trail name." And so they had come up with a few trail names, and out of the 3, I liked Energizer best, and that's the one that stuck. So that's question number 2. Question number 3 is, why do I use Old Man in my vlogs? Old Man in the PCT, Old Man and the AT. Why do I refer to myself as Old Man? I was 57 years old when I hiked the PCT. I am 59 now when I'm going to be hiking the Appalachian Trail. And based on your context, I am not that old. I mean, yes, I'm not that old. But if you look at the age demographics for thru hikers, most of which that fall in their 20s and early 30s, and then you go through the age demographics, and then there's a little bubble at the end of it, and that bubble is the old man category, and my age falls in that demographic. Now, I am not suggesting I am the oldest person on the trail. That honor goes to Nimble-Willed Nomad, who hiked the Appalachian Trail at the age of 83 last year. And I am not saying I am the older man on the Appalachian Trail. I am sure there are people older than me that'll be hiking in year group 2022. You might be one of them. But again, I am not saying I'm the oldest man in the AT, or I'm not the older man in the AT. But I do fall in the old man category. I'm comfortable with that. And I'll own it. I'm good with that. There is more to the story of why I chose Old Man in the PCT and Old Man in the AT. And if you are interested, I would invite you to listen to the podcast, the Hiking Radio Network, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, episode 252. Where I was interviewed by Steve Adams, and Steve and I peel back the onion several layers of why I chose Old Man in my vlogs for Old Man and PCT. So that is question number 3. And then question number 4. Why am I hiking the Appalachian Trail? If you were following along with Old Man in the PCT, you know that on my very last video, I said that I had no interest in hiking the Appalachian Trail. And I didn't. Had no interest at all. And when I signed off from that video, I thought that was it. My thru hiking days were over with, and I was moving on to other things. But at some point, and the only way I can describe it is, at some point, the Appalachian Trail called to me. Very low voice at first, so I was, I was easy to dismiss. But that voice inside of me continued to grow louder, and at some point I could no longer ignore it. And then at some point I had to accept it. And it's funny, is another example of my wife knowing me more than I know myself, when I finally did make the announcement to my family, hey, I'm going to thru hike the Appalachian Trail, the first thing my wife said to me was, I knew you were going to do it. Eventually, I knew you were going to do it. So the question I'm dealing with now is, why did the Appalachian Trail call me? And I'm wrestling with that one. And maybe that's something that we can discover together while I'm hiking the trail. So if you want to continue on and follow my journey, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll take this journey together. It's going to be great.